Welcome to my podcast, Conversations with David. I'm your host, David Owasi. And on this podcast, we are talking to accomplished professionals and entrepreneurs across the country. We're learning about what keeps them passionate, what keeps them going. And we're also talking about some of the lessons learned along the way. Now, I am here with my good friend, Jesse Teron. We've known each other for quite some time now, and I'm excited to have him on this show. Jesse, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey David, yeah, happy to be here. I live in Vancouver, BC. I co-founded a company called Persistence AI. We're actually based in the States. I partnered with a guy I met working with the startup, and we've been doing that for a few years now. It's super fun, and just love everything from sales and to business growth and human performance. So.
Thoroughly exciting. And Jesse, I've known you for some time, and one of the things that I've known about you is your incredible ability to perform beyond expectations. And we'll chat about some of those things in that conversation. But the first thing I wanted to ask you about, Jesse, was your journey into entrepreneurship. Why was entrepreneurship interesting to you?
Yeah, I got really interested in entrepreneurship, from a pretty young age. From my brother was super passionate about it. My grandpa had multiple different ventures as well, so we kind of followed in those footsteps. And my brother really led the charge with always thinking of new ideas, different projects, and everything. So we started a bunch of different things growing up as kids, and then I just continued the trend. And then he went through the entrepreneurship program at UVic, and he's 5 years older than me. And then I ended up following in his footsteps and also going through that program as well there.
Totally. So you've been doing entrepreneurship from as early as you can remember.
Pretty
And
much, yep.
it's pretty interesting that it runs in the family. For myself, when I think about my own entrepreneurship journey, I was pretty much the first person to be an entrepreneur as far as I can remember on both sides of my family. So, very interesting to hear about that. And, Jesse, where I got to really know you was through College Pro. And for our listeners, a lot of my guests on this podcast have been people who've gone through the same program. College Pro helps train students to be entrepreneurs in the real world of residential and commercial painting. What was the journey like? How did you get into College Pro? How did you get into that program?
Yeah, I actually came across a booth on campus at UVic, and it said entrepreneurs start here. And I was looking for a summer co-op position. And so I just went over there and chatted with the guys at the booth. And then, I was pretty much like, before I even knew what was fully involved, I pretty much called the general manager and was like, I'm going to do this. So let me know the next steps and how this goes. And anyways, long story short, went through all the interview process and ended up taking it on. And it was definitely the hardest thing I've ever done in my life at that point. Especially that first year. Just, I went from being about 175 pounds and quite fit and, super into fitness to, I think I gained 35 pounds that summer, and I was, well over 200 pounds and very stressed out from everything involved. And a couple of times, multiple breakdowns in that journey, and just, on my bed, crying and not knowing how I'm going to get through the next day. And, I think that that whole journey just, built such a level of tenacity and resilience for me and things that I carry with today. And, going through that experience at an early age was just set me up for, everything that I'm doing now and all those experiences. So, it was quite the journey. And that first year, man, I will always remember that first year for sure.
Totally, man. And thinking about that, I have, it's funny because you think back and you feel sort of the rosy, fun memories, but when you're in the trenches, it's really, really freaking hard and very difficult. Same thing with my first year. Now, your first year was a business in running a painting business with College Pro as a franchise, was a record-breaking business for you. I believe you smashed some records. Like, what was that like? Can you share some of those achievements with me?
Yeah. I think I broke the rookie record in BC for sure. I think I did, 234,000 in revenue that year. It was cool. I initially set out and, initially had a target of about 175 that year, and then quickly upped it to 225. And I knew that, over, I'm not even sure what I think the previous record was set the year prior, which was like 225. So, I'm such a firm believer. It's just like anything that you set your mind to. If you think about it, it's a classic Think and Grow Rich. Like think, plan, and then act. right? And so as soon as I set my mind to something and I get like super locked into that target, there's not that many things that will get in the way of me doing it. So yeah, that clarity, right? As soon as like I said, as soon as I get locked in on something and I'm clear on what the goal is, like come hell or high water, I'm gonna be able to make it happen. And with that too, like I mean, it wasn't the first month of production, I had a staff turnover. I had like 6 or 7 people quit. I didn't know how, I thought I was going to be a really strong leader going into the program because I was the captain of the university golf team. Thought I had great leadership qualities. Turns out, yeah, it wasn't so hot in that first month. And then, as soon as I figured out that if you help your team hit their goals, like your goals become inevitable, right? And so the focus wasn't even, I knew, my target and I was going to do that, but my focus quickly shifted in, I think, June to how do I make sure that, that all my painters and all my team are super happy. They're making the money that they want to make. And as soon as I did that, it was like my goals just became inevitable.
Totally, very amazing insight. Thanks for sharing that. But I'm very curious, Jesse, about that first year of experience as a business owner generally. And the reason why I'm asking this is, a lot of our listeners are thinking of starting their own first business or in their early stages of running their business. What was the biggest takeaway for you if you could advise yourself, a couple years back and say, hey, this is what's to expect in your first year of entrepreneurship and real business ownership. This is what to expect. What would you be advising yourself, and what would you be advising to someone who is kind of in that phase right now?
Yeah, I mean, before College Pro, my brother and I, we ventured on a bunch of different projects, right? And uh, it wasn't until I got into, the College Pro system, right, with the franchise system that I was actually able to just go execute on. I think when you're first starting a business, there's so many things that you need to build, you need to create on top of actually executing. So when I was actually put into a system that the structure was built, and I could just go focus on executing, then that's what helped me become super successful. So I would say anyone that's starting out is find a system, right? There's so much training online. There's so much training available today, even if you're not in a franchise system. But you need to know the rules before you can break the rules. And if you don't know the rules and you're just you can spin your tires pretty easily, right? So biggest piece of advice is find a system that you can follow, find a system that you believe in, and fully commit to that.
Right, and if we break down, the idea of systems, I'm guessing that could really be in many phases. Is it a sales system? Is it a productivity system? Execution system? Like, how would you advise someone who is maybe overwhelmed with all of this type of system they have to think about? What should they be focusing on? I would imagine maybe sales, which is a crucial part of the business. You want to lock down the system. What else should they be focusing on in terms of creating systems?
Yeah, I think when people think systems, they think they need to have this whole elaborate this whole elaborate thing. Like when I'm thinking systems, I'm thinking things as simple as like checklists, right? Like what's a checklist? What's a checklist for lead generation, right? How are you going to go attract new customers? Are you just create a checklist for how you're going to do that, right? And then for sales process or the calls that you're doing, do you have a checklist, right? For the product and the offering that you're delivering or the service, do you have a checklist to make sure that that's fully aligned? For your customer success, making sure that your customers are you have glowing reviews from them. They're all rating you 5 out of 5 on Google, those type of things. And what's your checklist to make sure that that's going to happen? But I think that's the easiest place to start is what are those critical tasks that are going to make you successful? And it's typically a lot less things than you think. When starting a business, it can be overwhelming with all the different things that you need to do. And you really need to simplify the things that get you a result, right? So just starting, you have to start when you're starting a business is first thing is, well, what are you going to offer? What are you going to sell, right? Make sure you know that super clearly. Who's that target customer? How do you get them engaged? And then your process to enroll them into your programs or into your product or service.
Totally makes sense. Thanks for breaking that down. That really makes total sense. Now, after college pro, you did that for, I believe it was 3 years, if I'm correct. So three
Yeah, that's right.
years,
Yeah, yeah, 3 years.
and then you decided to make some changes, and you did a few things. But what was that experience like? Finishing, being in that franchise world that provided that system, that almost securing a way a community. What was it like, venturing out into the wild, if you will, and trying to sort of forge a path or create something new? What was that experience like?
It was a lot harder than I expected. I gained a lot of confidence when I was going uh, through college. Where I did really well in the 3 years there, and I was I've been so humbled over the last few years is the best way I can describe it, right? And like I say, now that what I'm saying on here is like find a system that works and like stick to that and follow that. Because after I left college pro, it was like I almost like had so much confidence that I thought I could break the rules before understanding the rules about going into to a new venture. So I had a little bit of time working with a startup. I was working remotely, living all across the world in Colombia, Europe, everything doing that. I ended up, wanted loved I just love entrepreneurship, and I was like I just couldn't see myself working for a company for that long. So I decided to venture out on my own, and I went straight into tech, which was interesting because the company I worked for, was I had about a year of part time experience with them when I was doing college pro, and then I worked about 6 months full time. But it wasn't that much, call it career capital
Hmm.
in the tech space, and so I went to I built like a mobile app, and like we ended up launching that, it hasn't got like a huge ton of traction and whatnot, and I was just like trying to figure it out, and it was also new, and I didn't have a system to follow or anything, and yeah, that was like one of the most difficult things I've ever done, right? And then, but the best thing that I did with the company Persistence AI was um, I partnered with a guy. He's 20 years older than me. He's had multiple exits in startups, and that's the reason why that company's scaling so fast today. Is that he like you know I ended up in the right place at the right time to be able to partner with him. But he's bringing so much expertise and knowledge from that industry, and then I get to focus on what I'm really good at, which is business development, which is sales and that type of thing. I don't have to worry about anything on the tech side. Whereas when I was launching and creating this mobile app, it was like I was responsible for everything, and I didn't really know that much, and it was very difficult. So I ended up starting a couple businesses at the same time, and now like it's like kind of like case study one of like me trying to do everything on my own type of deal. And, it's turned into more of a passion project at this point. Versus case study number two, partnered with a really smart guy on the tech side. Company's going really well. We have, more than 10 people on the team now. It's scaling really quickly each month. And it was crazy that, starting the companies about, a month apart from each other, how I completely went about a different process on each one. And now I can look back and say, wow, like it's a big difference on how I went about them. And there's a reason why one's going really well and why one is kind of just a passion project now.
Totally, that's amazing. And when I'm hearing that, I'm hearing some of the struggles I even faced myself after college, bro. You almost feel like you're the champion of in a local small arena that which college pro provides, and then when you go out into the big world, you almost feel sometimes you have this confidence, but then you can also easily feel lost and be lost really in the big world. And so, thanks for sharing all of that. Now, I guess my question for you, Jesse, based off of that experience you just shared, how would you decide? I guess the question is between, do you want to be a specialist or do you want to be a generalist, right? And for sometimes as entrepreneurs, we have all these big ideas. We want to do all these crazy things. We want to change the world, but we're still just being generalists. We want to solve this big problem. What would you say, for someone who's thinking, I want to solve this big, massive problems that involves, having more of a general skill or maybe targeting a general audience as opposed to compared to trying to be more focused, trying to be more niched, and trying to be more laser focused, if you will? What would your advice be for someone who is maybe thinking, I want to do this huge massive things, I want to change the world, and someone is like saying, no, just focus on one little thing, one service, one product, one skill set? Would you say that's the path to succeed, or how do you balance both approaches?
Yeah, I love this question so much. And especially coming from a guy that I'm like, I want to solve everything and I want to help everybody, right? But when you try to help everyone, you end up helping nobody. And that's kind of the approach that I took with EcoWake, right? I went through a 10-day silent meditation retreat. I was doing a lot of spiritual work and connected with myself. And I really came out of that and I was like, I need to make a global impact. Right. And I went just like so big and like so global that I was like, I'm going to create this mobile app that's like insanely scalable. We're going to be planting, millions of trees and, really helping the world on that global level. And uh, it's exciting. It's cool. But when you're just getting started out, especially if it's, you're early in your career or you're just getting going, is like, start small and start local, right? And start like, that's one thing I think when I went, from running a local painting company to going online, the online world is so vast. You're connected to literally the entire world online. There's people doing things everywhere. And um, the biggest piece of advice, and I've actually been watching Undercover Billionaire the last couple of weeks, and they're dropped off into a local community that they've never been to, and they have 90 days to build $1 million business, right? And the biggest thing that I've noticed is because they're given $100, they're given a phone and then a truck, is none of them are sitting at home on their laptop. They're all out meeting people in the community and like big players in the community, and they're doing it on a local level. And they're seeing how they can help people, identifying problems, identifying challenges, right? And actually solving those needs. And that's what we did with Persistence AI. As my business partner, he identified a problem, with lead conversion in these enterprise companies down in the States, right? And we're solving one specific problem, which is helping get more leads onto phone calls, and we do that with artificial intelligence and texting. Whereas if you have a huge general market, there's a billion problems that need to be solved, and you just don't end up getting traction or going anywhere, right? So it's like biggest piece for someone just getting started. From what I know now and from what I've experienced and the different failures and lessons that I've learned is go local, because number one, people in your local community want you to win, right? They're there to support you, and then identify problems and challenges, and then just solve one at a time, right?
Sure.
And just go one at a time. Start super small. Peter Thiel in 0 to 1 talks about this. He's like, if your target market, if you think it's too big, it's way too big. If it's too small, it's probably still too big. If it's really, really small, he's like, you're probably getting close to the right area, right? So start small.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Thanks for that insight, Jesse. And that's something that I actually learned very recently. After finishing college, I started this business called Caps Lock and the Goal. I'm a political junkie. I'm all about politics, and the whole fake news problem was something that I was very obsessed at solving. And I started out this company to solve, the whole problem of fake news. And of course, like yourself, it didn't really gain too much traction because I was not really solving anything. I was trying to do too much. So I definitely learned that. And as I moved into sort of corporate world to sort of learn a little bit and just kind of ground myself, I started to learn that you got to focus on one specific skill set or one specific problem, which has kind of evolved to my current consulting service, which is just focusing on one specific problem in emotional mastery. But
Love it. It's a way to
thanks.
go, man.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's funny because you learn by the mistakes, and it's funny that we kind of have similar journey here. Now let's talk a little bit more about Persistent AI. I know you explained a little bit more about you helped provide leads. Can you just unpack that a little bit more? What kind of businesses or what types of clients are you typically looking for? How can you typically add value to their business, and what would that look like?
Yeah, totally. So again, we're making mostly working with companies in the States, and quite large companies, right, that are doing hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of inbound leads every day. So these would be like insurance companies, financial service companies. So this would be like mortgage, tax services, debt consolidation, and then home services as well. On a bigger scale, like bigger brands, and then education. And so those are really the four verticals that we focus on. And so when someone goes on to their website to inquire, to get a free quote, or to get or they download something, they're essentially they're doing lead capture, right? So all these people are they get their information, and then typically what happens is it goes to their call center, and their call center makes an outbound call to get that person onto a phone or to get them their quote. Now, what happens is when companies are doing this on such a large scale is that a ton of those leads are slipping through the cracks, where they're not actually even able to contact upwards of 60 to 90% of those people that have expressed interest, right? How many times you go on, you request a quote and 5 minutes later you forget you did it, right? So you came across an ad on wherever you were. So instead, what happens is our system, as soon as that lead comes in, when we work with companies, is our system sends out an automatic text message and will say, hey, David, it's Jesse with home service company. Like, are you available to chat about your blinds quote? And then, you go back and forth with the system, and it's basically like an AI assistant, right? So you'll be texting back and forth. You'll be like, oh, I'm just busy doing a podcast right now, but how does, 3 p.m. sound? So then the system will say, perfect, sounds good. Like, we'll call you then. And then at that time, what happens is the system automatically will dial the company's call center, and it will dial you, and then we bridge that call live. And then we're just helping companies get connected with their customers. We're having conversations at scale, right? We're replacing lower level jobs. So instead of their agents having these lower level conversations, trying to get people onto the phone, they're actually training and empowering their agents to be, closing deals, helping people out more. So we're using artificial intelligence and automation to make that happen and to help those type of companies.
Absolutely. Wow, that's fantastic. Definitely, I can see the value for that. So I guess your clients will be mostly made to large size businesses, not necessarily like small startups. This will be your.
Yeah, we're actually coming out with a product pretty soon. Actually, we actually built out a virtual call center as well. So we actually, we call it the Uber for salespeople. So we have salespeople that log into the platform, and they're essentially extensions of companies' sales teams. And we're combining our artificial intelligence lead conversion product with the virtual call center to be able to service the SMB market. And so that's something that's in beta testing right now, and then we're going to be starting to sell that by about the end of Q1 here. So it is coming out soon. And basically for SMB businesses that are doing about between about 500 and 2,000 leads a month, where it's kind of the point where they could hire an internal sales rep, but basically with this service, it's going to be outsourced. They don't have to deal with any of that. They just, the lead comes in, then they just get appointments on their calendar. And so we're going to be servicing the SMB market pretty soon here, which is pretty exciting.
Totally. I can definitely see the application. I know personally myself as a consultant, I've been mostly in like the high ticket sales sort of world where, of course you want to get all those leads, but you potentially might, depending on the scale and the amount of leads you're getting, you might be needing someone to help close high ticket sales offers. So I think that's definitely something that could be applicable. Thanks for sharing that. Now, Jesse, one of the things that is synonymous with you is high performance, and whether that's, just cranking in the work ethic or finding systems to basically get a lot done in a short amount of time. What would you say is the secret of high performance based on your experience?
Kind of like what I was saying at the beginning of the call, clarity, right? I think people are really, really good at solving problems, but most of the time people don't know what they're trying to solve. Right. And so, I think that's where coaches, consultants are super helpful. I work with a lot of coaches in your business and in my personal life as well. But it's like, because as soon as I get that clarity on what I'm actually going after, I find it's pretty easy to go after. And I know that's something that, anytime starting a meeting or starting anything, it's like, what is the intention of this? Like, where are we going here? And get super crystal clear on that. So, if you, a big believer in like the quality of your life is determined by the quality of the questions you ask yourself, right? So if you ask yourself big questions of like how can I get more done in the day, or how can I get more done and also have more family time, right? Or how can I feel better? How can I 10x my energy? How can I, how can I wake up, jumping out of bed and ready to go for the day? And when you ask yourself those type of questions, your brain just starts to subconsciously start to solve it, and you start to seek out things that help support yourself. So gaining clarity and asking the right questions is, I think, a really, really good first step in terms of high performance.
Totally makes sense. I definitely can see that as well. When you feel jumbled and you feel pulled in all types of direction, then your energy is dispersed and you're not really hitting anything with maximum efficiency. The more you have a little target to hit, then the better you can focus energy on that. So thanks for sharing that. Now I know in your book, Discovering Purpose, Meditating in Silence for 10 days, that was almost sort of that work for yourself, finding that clarity. If someone is struggling with finding clarity, based on, that work you've done yourself, that exercise, what would be a sort of like one, two, three things you should be doing to approach this, find this clarity?
Yeah, number one would be get comfortable sitting in silence, right, in solitude by yourself, because anything that you're looking to get out of life, like you already have it within yourself, right? Most people today are looking externally for happiness, for fulfillment, for um, to get that feeling of, call it success, or whatever they're going after. But what people don't realize is that it's already within you. So learning how to be, comfortable with silence and meditating, right? Before I did my 10-day silent retreat, I maybe meditated. I was working to get in the habit about 5-10 minutes a day, maybe. But wasn't really that bought in, didn't really understand it at all, because I'd sit and meditate for 5-10 minutes when like all I did was think, and all I did, thoughts were just, coming in, and I'm like, well, I don't know if, anything's happening here. Right. But even now that I've done, 10 days silent meditation retreat, for a long time afterwards, I was in the habit of doing, 1 to 2 hours a day of meditation, not quite at that right now. But even now when I go to meditate, it's like, 20-30 minutes, even upwards of an hour when I do it, it is just thoughts going. Right. And what that period is actually doing, it's actually downloading everything external. Right. And if you don't have that download time, and you're just consistently uploading stimulus, like you just start to get jumbled, right? And so when I'm meditating and my brain's going like chaos, I'm like, perfect, right? Because everything's starting to download. It's starting to sink in, and then you will eventually get to the point where you download everything, and then you can really start to go deeper. And that's really what that 10 days allowed for me. Was I think it took me 36 hours in the first 3 days of meditation for my mind to calm down. Right. So even if you do it for 5 minutes, that 5 minutes is amazing, because it's 5 extra minutes that you've allowed yourself to download. So that'd be number one, is getting comfortable with silence and solitude. Number two would be to journal. I journal, pretty much every day. It just allows me to get clarity of thought. Right. It allows me to brain dump out everything that's in my head. It allows me to write down my goals, dreams, gratitude, be grateful for everything that I have in my life, and even grateful for things that I'm creating in the future, and being grateful for it today. Already getting those feelings. So that'd be number two. And then number three is fitness, like just hard exercise, right? Like you always feel significantly better. And what I found, even it was like, I think in like May, kind of like after the pandemic had like settled in, is that I had like a crazy amount of fatigue, right? And what I found, and then I was like, oh, I'm like, I don't feel like working out because I'm so tired, right? But then what would happen is, I'd wake up tired, right? Go about my day, feel more tired, wouldn't work out. But then I go to bed at night, and my mind would go like chaos, because I had all this built up energy, right? So then I'd sleep like crap, and then I'd wake up exhausted, and I went on the cycle, and it didn't change until I was like, oh my gosh, like when my head hit the pillow, like I had all this stored energy, that as soon as I made sure that I was incorporating fitness like every day, to expend that energy that you have internally, that I finally got deep rest, right? And then I was able to wake up, feel a lot more energy, work out even harder, go to bed tired, right? If I'm ever thinking about going to bed and I have a built up amount of energy, it's like, I'll go do something to burn it off, right? So yeah, solitude, sit in silence, get comfortable with that, journal, gratitude journaling as well, and then do a lot of fitness and work out really hard.
That's amazing. Those are fantastic insights, and I think they all connect perfectly. And I particularly like the first one, which is that meditation, and that really helps you really center yourself. And that's something that I've been practicing myself. I'm fortunate enough, I have a hot tub. So for me, when I want to do my sort of meditation, if you will, and almost downloading, because I really I identify with that sort of downloading stuff. I go into my hot tub. I'm no screens, nothing. I'm just out in nature, almost in a way, looking at the sky, and everything just start coming and just rush and rush of all the things. And like I call it decluttering, if you will. I just
Yeah,
declutter everything, and then I'm able to
totally.
more like find my best ideas. I find insights in those moments. So I definitely agree with that. Only if I can do it longer.
That's it. That's it. That's the key, right?
Yeah, doing it longer. Now that brings me up to my next topic, Jesse, which is emotional intelligence. And as entrepreneurs, we're dealing with people, we're dealing with all types of situations where emotional intelligence and balance is really crucial for performance. And when I think of emotional intelligence, Jesse, I think of three things. I think of awareness, self-awareness. I think of regulation, and I think of empathy. What would you say is the place of awareness? Because some of the work you've talked about, the meditation, the finding yourself, the journaling, that's really all about finding that awareness, finding your inner self. And part of our earlier conversation, you said most of the things we want to do, we have it in ourselves. It's just about finding it. What would you say is a place of awareness in performing and in being a successful entrepreneur?
It's a great question. In terms of awareness, I'd say like something I became aware of is you're likely gonna go through some sort of like pain and suffering in life, right? And I kind of view it as two ways. It's like number one, it's I can control it and I can dictate it, right? Or the universe is gonna dictate it for me, right? And so whenever I seek discomfort or I make myself uncomfortable, right? Whether that means a really hard workout, whether that means sitting in silence for 10 days, whether that means um, uh, going and jumping in the ocean, right by my house here and going through some cold exposure, is I find the universe just unfolds for me, right? And things just come to me. Life flows a lot easier when I'm not doing those things that I know are really good for me. The universe will throw in a lot of curveballs at my way, like whether it's with work, whether it's with community, whether it's friends, family, those type of things. And in either way, I'm going to experience, some pain or suffering, right? But when I choose that discomfort, I feel in control, right? And then everything just like unfolds. And so, in terms of uh, awareness and gaining more awareness, I think the more that you seek those uncomfortable experiences, you start to understand yourself a lot more, right? And when you understand yourself a lot more, you begin to understand others a lot more, right? And you can actually, and you stop judging people, right? And you can become an observer rather than a judger, right? So you might not always agree or disagree with what somebody's doing, but you don't have to judge that. You can just observe it, right? And then you can actually critically think about the situation. But I think that you can start that, or that stems from doing things that are super uncomfortable, and that you put yourself in those situations so that you are experiencing things. Um, you're experiencing things in a way that you throw yourself extremes, right? So, for example, when I was on my mini retirement after I quit that tech company, I kept putting myself through extremes, right? So I would do like a personal development course where it's completely self-expression, right? Like your self-expression, you're having conversations with everybody. It's all about community, and then I did the 10 day silent retreat. And then afterwards I went back and did another course. So it was like August was self-expression, September was silent, and in October it was like full self-expression. I was kind of like ping-ponging myself back and forth. And then eventually you start to find, where your center is, right? And when you begin to understand where your center is, I think that you can have way more compassion for people. You can have a lot more empathy for people, and you can also understand that everyone is on their own journey, and and you're just there to help, and uh, they're there to help you too, right? As soon as
Absolutely.
you have that mindset that everyone's just here to help each other, life is a lot easier.
Yeah, totally. I definitely agree with you, your insights. Yeah, I think awareness is almost the point, the beginning point of personal growth and development, because there's nothing to grow if you don't know where you are. Just like I believe the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? If you don't know what you don't know, then there's really no point. Knowing where you are in your journey, what you're good at, what you're not good at, areas of growth helps you to really understand yourself and then move forward to knowing areas you can improve in. So thanks for that insight.
Well, I think too, on awareness, I think that's all we are, right? Like, are you aware? Right? If you just ask yourself that question, that's literally all you are, is awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Sure.
Right?
Awareness
Right?
is so crucial,
Yeah.
especially if you're trying to, you're trying to get out of your comfort zone. You're not trying to be just kind of do everything the whole crowd does and conform to society. If you want to really be original and sort of break out of the box with new ideas, creativity, all of that stuff, it really starts from awareness. You can't fake that. It has to be authentic. It has to be genuine. So the second piece of sort of emotional intelligence and sort of personal development is regulation. So, awareness is really understanding where you are, understanding your emotions, the good, the bad, almost some sort of kind of stoicism, right? Just being completely objective and it's just what it is. And it's not good or bad, it's just what it is. And then regulation is really about decluttering and trying to understand, put some of those emotions under control in pursuit of your goals. Now, as entrepreneurs, we have to have that regulation. We can't allow ourselves to be derailed by a bad interaction. You can't allow that to throw off your whole day. If you're having stuff going on in your personal life, you can't let that. No, you have to. You have to work on it, but you can't let it throw off your other activities and sort of ruin your goals. What would you say is the place of sort of that regulation or control of our emotions and all the toxic stuff that life throws at us? And how do you approach, balancing all of those to be more productive, to be the best version of yourself and hit those long-term goals you have?
Yeah, I think exactly what you said there is first understanding like nothing's good or bad, right? Things just are what they are, right? And so when you actually have an understanding of that, it's like, the how someone may perceive something, really horrible or something like, a setback or a failure, and you just perceive it as like it just is what it is. It's very different, right? And so when you can control that narrative in your own head, um, I think that's kind of like step one, is just being able to understand that. Because once you can understand that, again, that allows you to look at things objectively, not getting all emotionally wrapped up in it. The second thing too is like when something does happen where it might like rattle or shake you, like having different triggers to reset yourself, right? So let's say have a sales call and it goes horribly, right? And you're just like, you're angry, you're upset, or something. It's like, what are you going to do to reset yourself, right? Like, one thing that I do is like, I'll just get away from my phone, computer, laptop, just go for a walk. Just go for a walk, reset, like, calm down your mind. And then also like, I follow a lot of Stephen Kotler. He does the Flow Collective research. All these studies on flow, and you have different flow profiles, and understanding um, how you can hack your flow, right? And so there's four different flow profiles that you can do. I won't go into it here, but understanding that, if you're super competitive and, they call it a hard charger, being able to hack that flow state, so that you can regulate that, right? Or if you get your best work done in, complete silence, solitude, you're a deep thinker, understanding that as well, so you can regulate that. And then also too, there's so many studies out there about willpower,
Mm.
right? And how your willpower declines throughout the day. So something that um, maybe didn't bother you at 9 a.m. could really set you off at 4 p.m., right? Because your willpower and your discipline decline, not discipline, but your willpower is declining throughout the day. But you can actually reset that,
Mm.
right? You can actually reset that through things such as like power naps, through hard workouts,
Mm.
through cold exposure. What are those things that just allow you to reset that? Because you do that, and then all of a sudden, that same interaction can occur very differently because everything's just occurring, right?
Mm. Mm. Totally agree with you. Those are fantastic suggestions. I'm a big fan of flow and just maximizing your flow when you're just in the zone to power through your work and get things done. I definitely agree with that, and I do like all your suggestions for self regulation. I think those are very important. Now we could definitely talk about some of this concept for a while, but I wanted to hit the last pillar, which is empathy. And when we're preparing for this conversation, that was something I really was hearing in your voice. wanting to add value to others. And even throughout our conversation, you've brought up themes of kind of seeing everyone in their own journey and not judging, but just observing. I think that's a place of empathy. Now, a lot of people consider empathy to be, just being nice. Of course, it goes way beyond just being nice and smiley. It's really about putting yourself in other people's shoes and trying to think about how they will feel before, giving before putting actions out into the world. It's kind of just putting yourself in the shoes of the other person. What would you say is a place of empathy in success? A lot of people define entrepreneurs as just, sort of rugged and very mean and just ruthless people are just trying to pursue goals, no care, no word for anything. I feel like that model of entrepreneurs is not a sustainable model. But what would you say for true successful entrepreneurship and even like just general career? What would you say is a place of empathy in that?
I think you develop empathy by, like you said, understanding what people are going through in their situation. I think it's very easy to not have empathy and to potentially even judge people when you haven't done something or you look at something. And so I think one of the best practices that I do in my life and something that, I think everybody should do is do a lot of different things, right? Do a lot of different things. So like myself, even now, like when I look at different apps on the App Store, holy man, do I understand what those people went through to be able to make that happen. Whereas before I did that, I looked at it, I was like, oh, like I didn't appreciate, it like I do now, right? Like I just look at them like the finer details when I look at like a specific app and I'm like, wow, like this is unbelievably thought out. And I just appreciate it so much more. Same thing. The amount that I have empathy for authors and what they go through to publish their book and to put their thoughts and to get that clarity out there, man, I could have never imagined that, that process until I wrote a book, right? Or a SaaS founder, right? I understand. I have so much more empathy. Like anyone that's like, crushing in that arena, in that realm, I'm like, wow, like this is like you're unbelievable. Like this is just, incredible. And I think that when you don't put yourself through experiences, it's very hard to have empathy, right?
Mm.
It's so hard to do it. Or, and that, that's on the business side of things, but you do that in multiple different ways too. Like one practice I do fairly consistently is fasting, right? And just like eliminate myself from food, and like the amount of empathy you develop for people in the world that, maybe don't have access to food. And when I did a 72-hour fast a few weeks ago, and you're on day 3 and, all you can think about is food, right? Or all I could think about was food. And I'm like, I couldn't imagine being in a situation where you can't, just quickly go to a grocery store and grab what I need and be able to do that. So, if you want to develop more empathy, you got to put yourself in situations that other people are going through, right? And then you can develop it so much faster and actually understand what they're going through. I think there's countless things that that I'm experimenting with right now, and again, understanding what people have gone through or are going through. I'm doing this all the time, right? Just like new experiments, testing new things, new ideas, and new ventures and whatnot. And it just really helps me understand what people have gone through and appreciate people so much more, and also want to make a bigger impact as well and help people through those situations that they've gone through.
Totally. Yeah, I definitely agree with you. You can't appreciate the pain of running a business if you've not done it before. And,
100%.
being there, done it, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's impressive. Like, I know what it is to run a $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 business. You've done even double of that. I understand what you've gone through. And I think that helps us really be better people, support a network better. For me, I think one of the key things that helps us to be more empathetic is to ask good questions. And I know that's something you definitely talked about earlier in our conversation, when asking yourself good questions or asking other people good questions. And generally what I found to be helpful is, sometimes, we don't have experiences that other people have. And that is okay, because we can't have every single experience in the world. But it's asking people, can you please just walk me through your thought process? Or can you walk me through how you arrived at this conclusion? Or just help me understand where you're coming from. And I feel that when we give people that chance to kind of help us understand their journey, understand their struggles, where they're coming from. It helps us. It doesn't mean we will change our mind about that certain thing, but at least we'll approach it with a better rounded perspective on that specific issue. And I think the key to empathy is asking genuinely inquisitive questions of other people.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, man. Getting super curious, right? Yeah,
Mhm.
just play curious, curious George with everyone that comes into your life. It's like the amount that you learn is crazy.
Absolutely. Now,
So
I know something that is important to you, of course, is leading through people. And, that would sort of almost walk into the whole ideas of empathy. Can you just unpack that a little bit for me? What does leading through people mean to you, and why is that important?
yeah, I think leading through people, like just I love being able to create and give opportunities to people, right? Um, and obviously I'm doing that, a lot through business and entrepreneurship, and creating new roles and for people to come through, and like and being able to grow and like have your team align with that vision or that mission that you're up to. And then, like I said in the beginning, it's the same thing that I did with, my painting company and, or in all the painters and the marketers. It's like, okay, guys, like what's really important to you, right? And understanding what's important to people. So whether it's, a financial goal, or whether it's a learning and development goal, or whether it's a growth goal, or they want to, add something to the resume, or culture, team culture, and having fun is important to them. Whatever is important to them, like that's what's got to be important to you if you're leading them, right? And then, what I always do is just make sure that any of their personal goals are obviously in alignment with the company and in the vision and the mission. And as long as they are, then it's like my biggest job is to help them get there, right? Because again, if we can help people on our team accomplish their personal goals and their individual goals, like the team goals all just going to come together. So that's what I really think about when I think about leading through people. And is creating opportunities, having them be super crystal clear on what they're creating, and then just serving them in every possible way to help them get there.
Yeah, totally agree with you. When I think of your response here, Jesse, I'm thinking, I think I must have read it somewhere. There are two ways to get people to do things. You can either inspire them or you can manipulate them. Manipulating is not, it's not, it doesn't, you can't sustain that over the long term. But when you inspire people, you use their own goals, their own reason for wanting a goal to happen to inspire them to hit that goal. And that is very, very sustainable. And you'll have people happy doing things that impacts you back good and also impact them, sort of a win-win scenario. And
Exactly. Yeah.
I think that's sort of the core of empathy, trying to find those win-win scenario where you're winning, you're hitting your goals, you're getting to where you want to, and I'm also hitting my goals through you hitting your goals. And when we find those win-win scenarios, we're all the better for it. Last question I have for you here, Jesse. We've talked for almost an hour now, which is amazing. It's gone by so quickly. We're in a pandemic, right? And we're sort of hopefully sort of getting to that post-pandemic era. What has been the biggest learning for yourself as we've navigated this historic event? What have you learned? And as we sort of we're getting approaching the end, hopefully, of this pandemic, how has that changed you for the better?
Yeah, so many lessons from the pandemic. Probably the biggest one that first comes to mind is be prepared, right? Always be so prepared. I think uh, that it almost feels like that came out of nowhere, right? And I can definitely say, like, I wasn't prepared. I wasn't prepared to handle that, even though I've built really good personal habits and those type of things. Like it really caught me off guard. So now it's just like, I'm consistently looking at like different trends, whether it's in business or finance, health, any of these things, just like always being so prepared for anything and everything moving forward, right? And so that's honestly probably the biggest thing that I've taken from the pandemic is just in terms of preparation, being proactive, and then also community, right?
Mm.
Like just how important human connection is, um, and again, I got really obsessed with like going to the online world, doing the whole travel, working remotely thing, and 2021, I'm like, uh, I have obviously a lot of online things going on right now, but a big focus is think local,
Mm.
right? What's happening in the local community, right? There's 25% of businesses in Greater Vancouver don't think they're going to survive past 12 months. I'm like, man, I can help that number, right? I can help that number go down, and keep the, instead of just thinking so broad. Oh, I'm going to help all these people online, the whole world. It's like, what's happening right in front of your face, right? Because there's so much there, and there's so many people that need help, that need support, and also that are there to support you as well. So yeah, always be super prepared. Importance of community, your friends, your network, whether that is virtually right now, during the pandemic, or then more in person once things open up more again. And then think local. There's so many things that are right in front of your face, and especially with more people going online now, right? Everything is just so online that I'm almost thinking the exact opposite now. It's like, how do I help more people offline?
Sure.
That's pretty cool.
That's a big, definitely big learning point. Thank you for your insight, Jesse. It's been so much fun having this conversation with you, and you sharing all your wisdom, your insights. You're someone who I definitely think will be a shaker in the world as we move into the post-pandemic age. Thank you again, Jesse. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thanks, David. Appreciate it, man. Keep doing great work.
Absolutely.